We had been trained as a division to fight in the desert, and we were going to North Africa. But at the time that we left this country, it was too dangerous to go through the Mediterranean, so we went right down to Halifax, Nova Scotia, Cape Town, round that way. And during the time that we were coming into Cape Town, which was December the 7th, 1941, I was working in the library on this ship. The ship I was on was American. They weren't in the war. No one knew that they were convoying us. And the man that was in charge there, an American sailor, I said to him on this Sunday morning, "You're looking a bit grim, what's the matter?" He said, "We're one of you now." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, they bombed Pearl." So I said, "Who's Pearl?" "They bombed Pearl." "Who's Pearl?" He said, "It's our Pacific Fleet, and they bombed it." And I said, "Who bombed it?" He said, "The Japanese." We eventually, after many weeks sailing, came into Singapore under fire and under bombing and shelling. So we came down the gangplank after 3.5 months, straight into action. And when they train you, they teach you everything you need to know about fighting. But there's one thing they don't tell you, and that was the worst of all, the noise. When you suddenly come into an action with shells and guns and mortars going off, it's stupefying. And that is how we landed in Singapore, under fire, like that. I was a gun driver, and I was knocked out after 5 days. So my fighting war was 5 days, and for that 5 days, I was away from home for 7 years and 3 days. I was in the hospital and not knowing that the Japanese had got the place, and I was lying in a bed, severely wounded, and I saw the walking wounded walking quietly out of the ward in single file without saying a word, their hands tied tightly together with barbed wire, and they were tied to each other with barbed wire, and behind them was this soldier with a rifle and bayonet. And I said to the man on the stretcher next to me, "Isn't that a Japanese soldier?" I'd never seen one. You see, in the artillery, your enemy's 6 miles away. And he said, "Yes, he's a Jap." And I said, "What's he doing in here?" I didn't know the condition. I thought it was normal. No. He said, "Oh, they're taking them onto the front lawn and killing them there," which is what they did. The walking wounded, they tied them all up with barbed wire and then bayoneted a lot of them. And then they came into the ward, wiping the blood off their bayonets, and proceeded to kill everyone in the ward, in the beds. Everyone got bayoneted, even the nurses, the doctors, everyone was killed, and I was the only survivor. And the reason was that in action, when I'd been blown up, my right hand was just hanging off by the skin, and apparently what had happened, this tourniquet, he hadn't put a good one on at all, and the blood was still pouring out of me onto my chest, onto the bed, onto the floor, and I was lying like that. And when they came to bayonet me, they saw all this blood running out. They thought they'd done it and walked on. So that's how I survived that. Well, when I found out that I was a prisoner, I still was very young and naive, of course, and I thought, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I dare say we'd be knocked about a bit and bashed around, and of course that's what happened. Wherever you were being beaten around by Korean guards with sticks and stones and bars and all sorts of things. I found that if a Japanese gave you an order to do something, if you did it, that was it, end of it. Koreans told you to do something, they'd keep bashing you while you were doing it and bashing you when you finished it. We built this viaduct out of teak, and when you think of the wonderful achievement to do that, because the Japanese spoke no English, we spoke no Japanese, and yet somehow or the other they had this. And when we built the viaduct, it's still there today, you can go over it, it was made of teak, and we then had to creosote it. And we were working in 110, 120 degrees sun, and if you got a spot of creosote on you, it blistered straight away. And we were given a 5-gallon tin of creosote and a pole, a bamboo pole with a sack on the end of it, and we're supposed to climb up there and creosote it with this thing. Now, as a result of being bombed earlier on and blown up, a certain part of my brain was damaged, which gave me vertigo, which I have today. That's worse than ever it is now. I have no balance. And I told the Japanese, the Korean guard, that I couldn't climb up there. So he went off to get himself a pole to beat me up with. He'd given me 5 gallons of creosote. This hand was out of use for 5 years. The only way I could carry anything was on my elbow like this. This leg wasn't working because I was shot, and I had a rope round that to walk with. So I used to go around like that. And he expected me to climb 100 feet up. And of course, when he went to get this thing to beat me up with, of course, I started climbing. And it took me about 10 minutes to get to the top. And when I got there, I just couldn't open my eyes or anything at all. The whole world was spinning around. So I got hold of the side of the bridge and hung on. I couldn't move again. And he was shouting at me from way down there to get on with it. And I just went like this. God Almighty had told me to get on with it. I couldn't. 30 seconds, he was up there, and he threw my 5 gallons of creosote over me. And I put my head down, that's why I got none in my face. But straight away I was coming up like the Michelin Man. And I ended up in the river. And fortunately I looked so terrible with these burns that the Japanese put me on a truck to go down country. And I said goodbye to my friends, 8 of them. And I said, well, I'll see you soon. And my particular friends, you won't see us again. I said, why not? He said, we'll all be dead. And 3 weeks later, they were all dead. Now, if I hadn't been burned that day, I would have been dead as well. And I was on in a camp called Chungkai, away from the railway, recuperating. And from that day on, I never worked on the railway again. Probably one good reason why I'm still here. One day, the Japanese and Koreans, I think there were 4 of them, selected 5 of us at random, for no reason at all, and took us off down into the jungle in a lorry, which was most unusual. We never went in lorries anyway. We had to walk barefooted. And they took us in there, stood us against the trees, and got a machine gun out, put it on a tripod, aimed it at us. We didn't have blindfolds or anything, of course. And then we stood there to be killed. And we waited for the bullets. It's a horrible feeling looking down the barrel of a machine gun knowing what's coming. And the bullets didn't come. And we waited and waited. We were talking to each other. You know, why don't they pull the trigger and get it over with? And those bullets didn't come. We stood there for 10 minutes waiting. My knees were knocking. You'd hear them from here. And then suddenly, they decided, they thought better about it. And they dismantled the gun, took us back to camp in the lorry, and when we got there, we found the war had been over for 3 days. So I could have been done in when it was all over. In one particular camp, the camp commandant loved magic, and he'd seen me. And he sent for me to do some tricks. Of course, I hadn't got anything, just stones and things. And so I asked him to lend me a coin, which he did. He had a tin of fish on the table, and I vanished the coin, magically, opened the tin of fish and produced it from there, and I got to eat the fish, because they wouldn't touch anything that we'd touched. We were verminous, you know. So the next time I went, he used to get me in there quite often. I looked around, there were some bananas. So I did magic with bananas. I was doing tricks with anything that was giving me vitamins or anything like that. And also, I was being looked on by the Japanese as, you know, quite a person. So I didn't get so many bashings as I used to get. And on the Wampo viaduct I was talking about, we were working 14 hours a day, and we used to get 10 minutes break every hour, and we could get some river water and boil it up and drink it. And while we were doing that, I would start doing magic with the guards. The guards would see it, and they loved it, and they'd say, you know, more. And so I'd do some more. And I could sometimes turn that 10 minutes into 45 minutes before they realized it. And during that 45 minutes, my friends were stealing potatoes from the Jap stores. So you put the thimble in your hand. Oh, I need a thimble, don't I? There's one. Put it in your hand. Give it a little squeeze, away it goes. And it comes back down here, like that. You didn't get the idea. I put it in there, squeezed it, it went away, and it came back down here. But some people think that it doesn't go in there. You know, I want them to see that it's actually in my hand, and the little wave, it goes away, it comes back down here again. And there are people who still think that I didn't put it in the hand, so put it in the hand and close my hand one finger at a time. 2, 3, 4. Thumb on top, little wave, away it goes, and it comes back down here again. It was great for the morale of the troops. Well, I must say, I never saw the morale drop, ever. My only thought was to survive. I had said to my fiancée, to whom I was engaged the day we left this country, I said, I don't know where we're going. I don't know what's going to happen to us. I don't know what happens when the war is over. But, you know, please wait. I'll be back. And my whole philosophy out there was to try and make certain I got home. I've got to get through today. I must survive today. Don't think about yesterday. Nothing can change yesterday. It's history. Don't think about tomorrow. You might not wake up in the morning, because many of us died in sleep. But when you woke up, get through today, whatever happens. When we got beaten up, I used to think to myself, I don't mind if he breaks my arms or my legs. You know, I just don't want him to kill me. So priorities, what's a broken arm or a broken leg? Having been through those dreadful experiences, you get your priorities. You don't need a refrigerator, you don't need a car, you don't need nearly anything. And people worry you or threaten you or whatever. You don't need any of that. So long as you've got a roof over your head, some warmth and some water, That's all you need. You don't need anything else. So I learnt that when things aren't going well, don't worry about it. It'll be all right. Do something else. And I have never, if I've seen some worrying situation coming my way, I go the other. And it's served me very well. I've had the most wonderful, happy life since those days.